The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the Makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the Makers of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen. Welcome to the Makers of Minnesota podcast. This is a podcast where we talk to local people that are making things, and it could be technology-driven things, it could be physical things. In this case today, it's kind of a little of both. It's some creative ideas, and then there's actually a physical product. This is episode 24 today, and we are talking with Amy Loken, and she is the creator and founder of Modular. And Amy, I think I saw your products first at like a trade show where you were introducing them for women-owned businesses. And I'm going to let you explain your products, and then I'm going to tell you why I thought it was so amazing.
All right. Well,
welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely. I'm going to have you pull your microphone just a little bit closer.
All
Super.
Right. Awesome. Well, super. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yes.
So yeah, you know what? I created a modular marketing display that is meant to be viewed in a 360 because I believe we're viewed in a 360. So why shouldn't your displays also emulate that?
Yeah.
And they're dynamic and versatile, and they're meant to be used in 101 different ways.
So when I first saw you, I had been doing trade shows for my own small business. And when you go to a trade show, you're trying to carry things that maybe one or two people can carry. A lot of small businesses, you don't have, these thousands and thousands of dollars for these fancy displays. The pull-up signs are great, but they're kind of flat and not super exciting. So I saw you at this networking event, and you had this very cool graphic display that I could tell a couple people could set up. Were you in the trade business before, or how did you start this idea even?
Well, my degree is actually an industrial design degree.
Okay.
And I spent 15 years in the shopping center industry doing retail design and visual merchandising.
That makes some sense. Yeah.
So I did, so the common area of the shopping centers was my office for 15 years, all the way throughout the Midwest and all over the country. I actually worked for a company called General Growth Properties.
Yeah. They were located here. They owned Southdale for a while.
Yep.
And sure.
Absolutely. And so the last 5 years of that 15-year stint, I was contracted. So I actually had 6 different properties that I traveled around to that I was primarily the go-to person for all visuals in the common area.
So when, I don't know, in the beginning, I guess when did Southdale start? In the late 60s. Mm-hmm. They had a fountain in the middle of the common area, and then it kind of went to more cubes, cement cubes, sort of. And then there was always, there was at one point, even in Southdale, in the beginning of the atrium, there were birds. I don't know if you remember that. They had birds in these huge cages in the beginning. So you were the person who was supposed to make these common areas look inviting.
Yep. Well, actually, in the mid-90s, the shopping center industry realized that they had valuable real estate that was untapped, which was their common area.
Okay.
So you would see these pop-ups that they're called now. But back in the day, they were referred to as kiosks or holiday vendors and things like that came in basically from the beginning of November, end of October through January. And they, sold holiday gifts.
Sure.
Well, when those 9, 10, what happens for the remainder of those other 9 to 10 months out of the year, the shopping center industry, the management department decided, hey, wait a second, we have this untapped real estate. Why are we not leasing out this space the remainder of those 9 months, not just holidays? So then you started seeing a lot of the RMUs, or the carts, or the kiosks in the center of the shopping center convert to static displays or partially manned displays. So those were like my people.
Were you selling those people or helping them design the spaces or both?
Well, originally I was hired to help them design and utilize the space on the cart. So I helped them actually figure out how to utilize the space because you have a minimal amount of space. You have minimal storage inside there. You need to attract people because you have less than 4 seconds, regardless of whether you're walking through a shopping center or a trade show or through your brick and mortar.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, you have less than those 4 seconds. As much as we don't want to admit that we make snap judgments, we do.
Oh, completely.
Social psychologists have actually estimated that we make a initial judgment within the first 4 seconds. And within 30 seconds, we've actually finalized our judgment on something or someone.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fast.
It is really fast. So and then you throw into the fact that, that first impression, so to speak, can be happening from 30 feet away from any angle possible. So that's where my thought process of the whole being viewed in a 360 comes from, because you're being viewed from all different angles in a really quick, short amount of time. So if you don't really think about it that way, then you're missing your own valuable real estate.
Right.
In a sense.
Yeah.
So that's where the thought process came from, was people would advertise their, gutter cleaners and invisible fences and, dentists and chiropractors in the middle of a shopping center during the mid-90s, because everything was starting to change. How we communicated, we could, switch channels a lot quicker. We had, satellite radio.
Yeah, it was more interactive.
It's very much so. So why not take that into a middle of a shopping center where you already have people in that buying mode?
Can you think of a success story where, like, you literally helped someone design a cart that sold lots of merchandise?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was probably back in the day when it was the Happy Feet.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Remember them?
Yep.
Yeah,
the podiatrist guys.
Yep. Well, no, the big slippers that that looked like,
because there was a store called Happy Feet.
There was, but prior to that, there was these great big giant slippers that looked like tennis shoes, and some looked like animals.
Yeah,
and I mean, we're talking way back.
Bigfoot.
Yeah,
I remember those.
Yeah, and so when I was in Michigan during a huge part of that, and I was helping, I had like 9 properties there, so I would travel around, and typically it was the same owner, and then he had different operators at all the different shopping centers. So I would design one cart, we would set it up, this was the approved design, and then it would roll out to the other 8 properties throughout the state of Michigan. So
cool.
Yeah. So that's actually where a lot of it started. And then I dabbled in the whole leasing aspect, because I really wanted to understand the big picture of the shopping center industry. And that's kind of, so I definitely, dabbled in the leasing aspect, but visuals was always my thing.
So so you're doing that. Mm-hmm. Did you get laid off? Did you quit your job? Did you leave your job to go start this? What was the moment that you were like, okay, I'm going to branch out on my own here and do Mood Modular?
Well, it was one of those things. It was ironically, it was the week of Thanksgiving of 2008. And my husband came to me, and I was contract. So I was traveling between 5 different shopping centers at that time. Everything from Eau Claire, Wisconsin to Rochester in the Twin Cities. So that was kind of my triangle loop. And he's like, so have you seen an invoice come through? And I had seen the writing on the wall for a long time. We all know what happened once 2009 hit.
Yep.
So I suspended my contracts for non-payment of some invoices.
Okay, so that had to be really difficult, because you've done the work already and you're not getting paid. Mm-hmm. And you're at risk with these vendor relationships that you've created, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And so were you devastated?
I was, and at this, but I'm always somebody who looks at that glass overflowing. And, there's a reason certain things happen, and it was just time. It was just time to move on. It was time to reinvent myself. So ironically, before the end of 2008, my dad's health declined rapidly, and he could no longer care for himself or my mother.
Uh-huh.
So by January of 2009, my husband and I moved my parents into our home, and I became their primary caregiver. At the same time, I'm like, well, I need to reinvent myself. And it dawned on me that
In all your spare time.
in all my spare time, yes. So it dawned on me that, I'd looked at I'd done some interior design work and thought, oh, well, the whole staging thing's coming
Yep.
up. And I'm like, but you know what? My dad was the first man who taught me how to weld. And I remember him calling me when I was going to school in Denver, Colorado, getting my industrial design degree, and him saying, oh, this is what you need to design. And he was just always, he was an inventor by his own right. And I thought, well, what a cool way to get his mind off of his ailments and help me try to see if I couldn't make this little idea into something physical.
And what was the first idea?
I was looking for a way to replace myself in shopping centers. So I knew that people still needed what I offered, but they couldn't pay me to come in and do it. So I knew that things needed to be modular. It needed to be set up really quick. It needed to be lightweight. It needed to be stored flat. And most importantly, it needed to be able to be set up by one person who had no idea how it went together.
So you're thinking in terms of like merchandising and a kit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was basically kind of a visual merchandiser in a box.
Yep. So to start out, are you using cardboard? Are you using forms? How much money did you decide you were going to put at it? Or did you first start to like physically make these things?
I just kind of jumped in with both feet. I have always been really good about making really good relationships with people and really seeing people's strengths really quickly and
that's a
reading,
gift.
And reading people really well. So back to the shopping center industry, I worked with a local sign company who did a lot of the signage for the shopping center, from wall graphics to whatever. So I called her up and I said, so I have this idea and I'd like to pick your brain on materials. I knew I wanted it to be lightweight. I knew it needed to be interchangeable. And so I literally sat down with her and said, okay, here's my idea. What types of materials are out there that I could use? So we just started brainstorming and playing with different scraps that she had.
Was there nobody doing this at the time? Because it seems like an idea that someone would have had.
One would have thought.
Yeah. But no, you didn't find any competitors out there.
No.
Okay.
Not with the dimensional aspect.
Yeah, and the ease of setup
and the collapsibility and then so somebody asked me not too long ago, so do you still have your first prototype? And I'm like, yeah, it's sitting I think it's still sitting in a shopping center in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I just started selling them. So as I made them and met with people, we put we designed the graphics. We, put them on the substrate. I would either deliver them or ship them out. And as we would make upgrades and things like that, I would call them back up and say, hey, we've revamped a certain thing as a thank you to you for believing in us from the beginning. I would like to upgrade it for you. And just kept on building those relationships.
And when you started out selling your first kits, how much did they cost?
Oh, they were way underpriced.
Tell me about that.
To be honest, a lot of people. Well, I think my biggest first one was like around that $500 range, which was shocking to some people, and some people were like shocking in like, wow, that's really underpriced because I also put my design into that price as well. And so that barely breaking even.
I was going to say, so if you charge $500 for one of these displays, how much did it cost you to actually make it? Not to mention your time.
Yeah, well, if you include the time in there, That
You were
little
upside
factor.
down.
Yeah.
So were you just so excited to kind of get going and get some out there and you thought you'd deal with price later? Or did you really not factor in that your time had value and just underpriced it, which a lot of people do?
You know what? Yeah. It was, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And being in the fact that I went from basically selling my ideas and my talents, I mean, that's what I was getting paid for, to producing a product was really interesting for
Yeah.
me. So understanding those really cost of goods and then how to honestly and properly mark them up was crazy new to me. So what you don't know, you don't know.
So
Which was probably better in the end because I learned a lot in how much people valued my time.
So how did you learn that? Did you get business coaching? Were people telling you, gee, this is too inexpensive? Because a lot of people do make products, have no P&L or no sense of what they're actually making on their products, and they just keep going and they figure as long as they keep selling them, they'll be ahead. You know, but they never really understand exactly how much something costs for them to make it.
Yeah, for me, because I cared for both my parents to the very end. I'm blessed and honored to say that I watched both of them take their last breath in the same exact spot in my home. So
Over the course of how much time?
over the course of the first about 3 years.
And you were still had you been really working on starting up this business concurrently?
Prior to them moving in, absolutely not.
But so now they're with you.
Mhm.
And they're in varying degrees of illness and aging, and you're also starting a business. Was that happening the entire time?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But again, once you don't know, you don't know. And
Yeah.
and I'm the youngest of 6, and there's 16 years between me and the oldest, and almost 7 years between me and the one before me. So I was almost like an only child.
Sure.
And I remembered my grandparents in our home more than my siblings, to be
Yeah.
honest. So when my dad became ill and couldn't care for my mother anymore or himself, I knew no other way, but that's just what you did.
Yeah.
So it was just that juggling, and you just did what you did. And now I can look back and go, well, what the
Yeah.
heck was that? But you're just in the moment. So
Yeah.
you really,
I understand
you're just-
actually a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah, you're
I
just-
quit a job to take care of my mother who was ill, and she died 3 weeks later, so it wasn't
Yeah.
long, but
You do, and you're just in the mix
Yeah.
of it, and
so your parents now, over the course of the 3 years, you've launched the company. Was it always called Mood Modular?
it originally started as a Mood Modular Marketing Systems. That's a mouthful.
Yep. And I think marketing becomes complicated for
Yeah.
people to understand what it was you were selling.
Mhm.
Though I get it.
Mhm.
I can understand how people are like, what, huh? And the system sounds like a residual thing.
Yep.
So your parents have now passed, and I'm sorry about that, just for the record. And now you're trying to figure out, okay, you've got extra time, I'm assuming, and you're going to go full-fledged into this business. Were you still alone? Were you the only person working there?
Yep. Well, in building it, I had to be very resourceful, so I couldn't travel, and everything needed to be made and created very locally between Wisconsin and Minnesota.
Yep.
So it was very much this. It wasn't like I could fly to Mexico and have carrying cases made for me, because you can't just stock them.
Yep.
They're custom. And so I found a local guy who I had heard through the grapevine made it. His business was to make boat tarps. Well, I'm thinking it's 2009. You're probably not making as many boat tarps as you were a couple years ago.
Yep.
Walked in and said, could you make me a carrying case? Here's the drawing, the size. And he's like, yeah, sure. You'll probably be getting them from Mexico in a couple years. That's what everybody does. He still makes them for me today.
Oh, that's great.
Another gentleman, I needed some rods welded to a 3-inch base. And, I didn't have a welding equipment. I could do it, but started going, Googling and trying to find somebody local. And I didn't have a website, but he came up on the Google search. So I called him, set up a time, walked into his shop and said, this is what I need. If you just let me use your spot welder, I can actually show you exactly what I'm talking about. And of course, he took one look at me and kind of laughed and said, no, you're not touching my welding equipment, but thanks. I'll take care of that.
That's funny.
So he made my first set. You know, I have a place called the CDC, which is a career development center, which I get my rods in 12-foot lengths from another local steel company, and they deliver them to this career development center. They cut them all for me and round off the ends. And another small one-guy show cuts all my boards and does all of the holes for all my magnets. And yeah, it's just this huge collaboration of all these other businesses that were probably struggling to keep going during a time that, you know, and they were willing to work with me and do small and short runs for me instead of.
Do you think that would happen now in this time frame, that people would have that willingness? You know, the recession brought a lot of ingenuity to the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. I would hope so.
Yeah. And it's interesting. When you started, like, how did you pay all these people? Were you putting it on credit cards, or had you set aside a nest egg? And, you know, like when we started our business, it was $50,000 and that was all we were going to spend. And that was like our savings. Did you do the same thing, or how did you fund it?
You know, credit cards, to be honest.
Yeah.
When I left the shopping center industry, I was the breadwinner. So I leave my job and then bring in 2 dying adults into our home.
Yeah.
And, you know, honestly, a lot of prayers and faith. But yeah, we racked up some nice credit card debt. General Growth did become current prior to completely going. They went bankrupt in 2009, but they did come almost current with my outstanding invoices, which was nice. But
so when you look back and you figure you had to bootstrap your own startup costs, about how much do you think you would have needed if you have gone out and gotten a loan, or what was the amount that you think you started with for your business?
Oh, you know, in the first probably 3 years, it was probably close to, you know, upwards of 20.
Yep.
Yeah, easily.
That doesn't seem like that much.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
But, back then that was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was everything. I mean, I can, on top of trying to juggle, hospice and people coming in for, that
appointments
respite
and yeah.
Yeah. And then juggling doctor's appointments and all those things that just come with life. I coined a phrase. It was during, it was the short time between my dad's passing and having just my mom full time. And it's how we stumble through one journey that creates our next. And I stumbled big time with my dad.
Yeah.
We were a lot alike, very headstrong, very independent. And I can remember the day I was trying to, probably make a phone call, answer an email, get supper ready. And my parents are sitting in the living room. And all my dad wanted me to do was come in and sit down and watch an episode of Hee Haw.
And did you?
After like the third time of him requesting it, yes. But that was the last time I was able to watch a show, Hee Haw rerun with my dad.
Oh, that's interesting. And that's such a memory for you.
It is. And it was like nothing else mattered at that moment in time other than that.
Yeah. Oh, that's touching, actually.
It is. But it made me a better caregiver for my mom.
Sure.
In the end, because I remembered that.
Yeah.
So whatever we're doing in any exact moment, really, that's all that really matters in that moment. So it really made me look at the rest of that time with them and my time left on this earth.
Sure. And what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
So would you say your business is successful? Like, how long was it before you paid yourself, or are you paying yourself? Because how long have you been doing this now?
So,
2009.
It'll be 8 years in April. Yeah. So, it depends on the month whether
Sure.
I'm paying myself or not.
Do you still
honest.
month to month, depending on what your revenues are?
Yeah, I definitely have. Summers are definitely slower than the end of the year and the beginning of the year, and I think we we all find those dips and valleys, and but it's exciting to be able to announce that I've hired my first full-time employee.
I was just going to ask you.
Which
All
was,
right.
Yeah, which is just a complete leap of faith.
From a sales standpoint or from a putting the pieces together standpoint, what is that full-time employee doing?
She's doing a little bit of everything.
Yep.
To be honest, she's kind of my right-hand gal, but definitely getting her feet wet in the whole sales and understanding because of the whole business and being able to help me grow it.
There's so much money in trade shows and displays and marketing. Why wouldn't someone use your products? Or is it literally just like, I can't imagine someone looking at your products and thinking, no, I'm not going to buy that. Because I really think it's that cool, that easy, that dynamic. Do people say no, or is it just you getting the word out and like getting in front of more people?
It's that. It's getting in front of more people.
And everyone I know that has your product honestly loves it.
Yay. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and because you can see it and you can go to my website and you can see my Instagram posts and Facebook and all that. But until you actually see that how versatile it really is and that literally we give you a box and show you the 101 ways to think outside of it. I mean, whether it's my product or whatever display you have, use it for more than one purpose. Use that sucker. Get your revenue out of it. Understand how important it is of your brand recognition. And if you put that effort into that every time you're being viewed, it only can relate to your potential customer as a subconscious thing of, wow, they're going to put that much effort into me.
Do you end up having to like counsel people on how to work a trade show? Because so many people sit behind a table at a booth in a chair on their phone.
Oh,
it's like, no one is going to buy anything from you people. Come on. So
Yeah.
I would imagine you can make it look all pretty and shiny and beautiful, but if they sit behind it and don't talk to anybody, they're not going to sell anything.
Absolutely, which is why we typically remove the table completely.
Yeah.
My product definitely kind of forces them to do that. And I very much force them to stand out, literally, from, that sea of the pull-up banners and the tables. And I believe that your customers aren't flat, boring cutouts, and your sales displays shouldn't be either.
Right.
So, which is why you can flip our graphics around and the fact that they're magnetic and you can actually interact with them as you would interact with your customers.
How do you get the word out? How do you market it currently?
Right now, and because it's pretty much been me, it's trade shows, networking events, which is where,
Yep.
we connected many years ago, and doing conferences and
Okay. And when you think about social media and how that's impacted your business, like, are you on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook? Do you do all that? Pinterest?
I do. Yep. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Have you been able to monetize any of the social media assets? Like, literally, do you know someone saw something and bought something? Or is it more the idea of the show and tell?
It's more of the show and tell. Although 2017, I really hope to roll out a few more videos
Yep.
and actually interacting, because that's actually the sales. That's really what catches people when they see that you can go from a 1 square foot column and it can, morph into a table display or another floor display. You can literally go from an 8-foot table to an 8x10 booth, depending upon, how many displays you have.
Are your products trademarked?
Working on that.
Yeah, because has anyone else started doing what you do at this point now that they've seen how creative and clever your trade show displays are?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. It's so surprising because it's, in some ways, your ideas they're simple.
They are.
But at the same time, they're brilliant and they're colorful and they're bright. And if any of you listening are business people or you go to trade shows, if you're sick of just having the stand-up banner, but it's about the same cost. I mean, a stand-up banner, a good one is, $425. So you need 2 of those for a booth. So now you're at $900.
On top of all the other stuff that
Yeah.
you seem to
The tables and the
feel like-
skirts
yeah.
and
So
Yep.
yeah, in comparison, once you honestly add all those things up, it's not much different. And yet one of my displays you can, can morph into like 5 different ways.
Do you have different size kits now? Okay, so you might have like, what's your for entry price kit?
Our current entry price, which is truly a tabletop, is about that 800 range.
Okay.
Yep.
And then it goes up to like, what's your highest? And I
then
suppose you do custom work.
We do custom work, but then we also have put together packages.
Okay.
Where you can actually end up with probably 7 different displays in a package for, still around that $7,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which this is, it's amazing how much this stuff goes for. I mean, it's just when you really research the display industry, people spend a lot of money on these things. So what was your biggest sale? Like, did somebody buy 3 versions of something, or do you remember that day?
I do remember that day. It was actually because I had entered way back in the very beginning, I had entered a startup contest.
Yeah.
And got like runner up to it. But in the venting of it, we had to present in front of, firing squad, so to speak. And one of the gentlemen in there worked for a university and worked for the small business development aspect of it. And I owe a huge amount of my success to him. And they ended up buying several for the small business development.
Yeah.
And he then moved on to to go to the state level.
Okay.
So he called me one day and said, I've moved and I'm now in this position, and I love your product. And we, the American SBDC has changed the branding, so I want these in all 14 of our locations throughout the state. So we're going to have to probably repurchase the ones we already have from you because the branding's different.
Yep.
And I said, oh, well, actually, no, we can take those back and then just rewrap them. And then we can build additional ones for you, which he thought was brilliant. So you can actually, once you have our structures, we just rewrap them as branding changes. And then he ended up purchasing, some smaller displays that we do, small little tabletop ones that we do for our longstanding customers. We don't sell them individually. They come as part of a kit and are in like 14 of the locations, and then they have like 10 other displays that they ship around the state. So that was incredible.
That is pretty incredible. When you go to a trade show and you see like your stuff, are you excited?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, especially when it's like at an event that I had been to maybe a year or two previous, and then I walk back into another one of their conferences, and they're like, boom! So Mood has arrived, apparently.
Yeah.
Which is really cool and exciting. And
I love interviewing you because I think your product's great. I feel like you're on the cusp, and that if we can just help you get the word out, because there's no reason people wouldn't buy it. It's really beautiful, and it's creative, and it's clever, and it's easy to assemble, easy to handle. I hope that people will hear this podcast and spread the word, because everybody needs good trade show displays. And the stand-up banner, while it works, maybe just isn't the best way to represent your product, depending on what your product is.
Yeah.
But
well, and not only that, but we really want you to use them for more than just a trade show. So get rid of the PowerPoint everybody yawns and gets ready to glaze over their eyes when they see those slides come up, and instead utilize your display. I do when I speak.
Well, that's interesting. So using it as a presentation tool too.
Yeah, so I just they're all magnets, so I just click each of my points up, and then as I talk about them, I flip them around.
Cool.
And then because everything's laminated and you can turn them into dry erase boards, I actually write on it because I talk about a TED Talk that I want people to listen to about body language. And
So I'm thinking about goals right now, because it's kind of the end of the year and beginning to be the new year. Do you as a business person set up like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, year goals, or do you write goals down for yourself?
Absolutely. I carry my goals with me all the time.
And when you look back on them, are you surprised at the goals that you've achieved? Do you think like writing them down is important to your success?
I do, because it's that pen to paper, and I do the pen to paper, not just typing it. And maybe it's from my mom having Lewy body dementia and understanding that process, and and that we remember things more when we write them down. And they become, well, I've just shared them. They're on paper. They're on pen and ink. It's not just that flailing thing that's out there. It becomes more concrete, I guess.
Any parting words for anybody listening to the podcast today that might be an entrepreneur with an idea?
Oh, just don't be afraid. Just, be afraid. I think you should always have a little fear in you every single day. You should always feel those butterflies and that little pulse higher of that heart, because if you don't, you're not pushing hard enough and far enough outside that comfort zone.
Good advice, Amy Loken with Modular. Again, if you know anybody that's looking for displays or wants a creative presentation tool, you can find it's moodmodular.com. And she's got an Instagram account, Facebook, Twitter. We will link to these things on the Makers of Minnesota Facebook page. We also have an Instagram account. I'm dying to post some of your pictures so people can see them and help you get the word out. Thanks for being here today, and good luck.
Thanks. And it is MUD modular.
Yes.
There's umlauts above the U's. So.
We had to discuss how to get the umlauts when we're typing, and I may or may not be successful at them, but I promise I will try.
That's okay. You don't.
I was like looking at my
umlauts.
keyboard, and I knew you had them in your logo, but I'm like, what? Where are these umlauts, and how do I get these? So
blame my dad. He was Austrian German descent.
You know what? It's kind of clever though too. It looks cute. The logo looks cute.
It's all about you.
It is. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate you being on the podcast
Stephanie.
today.
Stay tuned for 60-second AP News headlines.